One year when I was home with my family for Christmas vacation, I was going to Christmas Mass like was the tradition with my family. But this Mass was a little bit different because our parish was having a mission. It was upcoming in a couple of weeks after. And so my family had volunteered to promote the upcoming parish mission at that Mass, because we knew that there would be a lot of Catholics coming to Christmas Mass who didn't come for the rest of the year. And this was a real opportunity to invite these people to go deeper into their faith. And so there I am, standing with all of my siblings at the door, and every person that came through, we were supposed to wish them Merry Christmas, invite them to the mission, and then hand them a little card that had all of the details on it. And as people started to come in, the awkwardness began to bubble up inside of me, because I started to see people that I knew coming towards the church, maybe friends that I had gone to high school with, people I had played sports with, and I was like, it's a little bit easier to ask people you don't know, but some of these people I didn't even know that they were Catholic until I saw them coming up for midnight Mass. And so they're coming up the steps, and I'm like, maybe I'll let my siblings get that one, or I'll turn my face away so they don't recognize me. I was feeling shame about inviting them to the mission, while at the same time I have this internal struggle because I actually want them to come. I think that it'll be actually really good for them. I want them to experience Jesus for themselves. I don't know what I was afraid of. Maybe I thought that they would think I was some weird Catholic guy, that they would text my friends, after Mass, guess who we saw passing out cards at Mass today, like some kind of Jesus salesman. Get your parish mission now while offers last. But I'm going to guess that most of you have felt something similar, that there's people in your life that you know don't know Jesus, that they don't come to church, that they don't really have a faith life. They're far away from God. And you want them to come and experience that, but at the same time, you have this fear about sharing your faith, where you're worried that if you try to ask them into that you're going to wreck the relationship, things are going to be awkward, that you're going to be rejected. And so many times we hold back from even starting the conversation. This has happened to me so many times. I've chickened out so many times, I'm afraid, and I just stay silent. But sometimes I'm able to pluck up the courage. Like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to start the conversation. But then because I'm nervous or I don't really know what I'm doing, the words just come out all wrong. I don't know if you've experienced that. You stumble over your words. I remember I was in university with a friend, and we were going out as a group to go and evangelize in a mall. We're like, let's just walk through this mall, talk to random people about Jesus, and see what happens. What could go wrong? What could go wrong indeed? So we walk up to this couple, this husband and wife, and they're running this mechanical horse kids ride. But there was no one in line, so we're like, oh, well, we'll go talk to them. Business is slow. And so we went over and we start to try and share our faith, but it's so rambling, it's so all over the place, like neither of us are making sense, and the couple is getting visibly irritated. And the one guy just cuts us off and he's like, do you guys want to buy a ride or something? And we're like, I looked at all 6'5" of me, looked at this tiny mechanical horse. I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is going to happen. And he was like, then why are you still talking to us? Okay, message received, we'll be on our way. Sorry about that. I don't even know why we're talking to you at this point either. But sometimes as well, we want people to convert so badly that we treat them in a disrespectful or manipulative way to try and get them to come into church. We treat people like projects rather than real people with real thoughts and real feelings. And this can sometimes come about because we have ulterior motives that have crept into our heart. Sometimes people will say, well, I guess we got to evangelize because if we don't, our church is going to shut down. It's like, well, sure, yeah, that's true. But that's not a good reason to ask people to come to church, right? At this point, it's like you're inviting people into a sketchy pyramid scheme. Right? We're just trying to build our numbers, keep our business afloat. That's not a good enough reason. Or maybe some of you right now, even right here, are feeling the pain of children or grandchildren that no longer come to church, that they're not sitting beside you right now, and there's a pain in your heart because of that. And mixing in with that pain sometimes, guilt can creep in, and you think, oh, Was it something I said? Was it something I didn't say? Was it somehow I acted? And what we can accidentally do is take that guilt and pass that on to them. We can try and guilt trip them into coming back into church. And maybe you've tried that, and it doesn't work very well. So we feel this tension. We want people to know Jesus. We know that it'll be good for their lives, and yet we're afraid to reach out and ask. But is there a better way to ask? What if we weren't seeing the results that we wanted because we weren't asking in the right way? Today's reading from St. James speaks to this. St. James was the first bishop of Jerusalem, and one of the things that he noticed was that people were asking for things that they needed from God in prayer, and yet they weren't getting it. I don't know if any of you have felt that way. You've been asking God for things, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Whether you're in the first century Christian church or in the 21st century, things don't seem to change that much, do they? But St. James had a very simple solution to this. This is what he writes in his letter. He says, "You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, in order to spend what you get for your own pleasure." Well, basically, St. James is saying there are 3 reasons that you don't get what you're asking for. And the first one is, we don't receive because we're not actually asking God for what we need. Sometimes we feel guilty about asking God for things in our prayer, like, am I supposed to be doing this? And I want you to know, it's good for us to ask God for what we need. God loves us. He wants to provide for us. Now, we have to do more than that in prayer. God isn't some magical Santa in the sky that just fulfills our Amazon wish list, right? We need to do more than ask God for things in prayer, but we are supposed to ask him for what we need. And so James is saying some of you don't receive because you don't ask. But the second reason we don't receive is because we're not asking in the right way. Maybe you've tried to bargain with God, cajole God, like, you scratch my back, God, I'll scratch yours, like try and wheedle a deal out of him. I remember doing this when I was a kid. God, if you give me a good mark on my exam, I promise I'll clean my room, right? We've all done something like that, right? But we're not supposed to try to manipulate God or force him into a corner as if we could, right? He's God. But rather, we need to learn to ask God for things in a respectful way. So we need to ask in the right way. And then finally, James says some of us don't receive because we're not asking for the right reasons. Imagine a first century Christian in the time of St. James. They come out of their house and they look across the street and they see their neighbor has a brand new chariot in his driveway. Brand new chariot. He's like, "Whoa, where'd you get that?" The neighbor kind of swaggers out. "Yeah, it was pretty expensive. 10,000 shekels at the market. 2 horsepower. But I deserve a treat. The Campbell business has been really good." And so the Christian goes back to his house. He kind of kicks his old, dirty, dusty chariot. Like, "Man, why can't I have nice things? This thing it's only 1 horsepower, right?" And he goes into prayer and he asks God, "God, I need a new chariot, please." He's not asking for the right reasons. He's asking out of envy. He's asking to keep up with the neighbors, and we can do the same thing. So James is saying, rather than doing that, we ask according to God's will, not for the wrong reasons. And so if you flip all of this, we receive when we ask God for what we need, when we ask in the right way, and when we ask for the right reasons. But this isn't just good advice on how to approach God in prayer. It's also the model for how we ask other people into relationship with God. What if we took James's words and applied them, trying to understand why the people we care about aren't sitting with us in church right now? What if we said, "You do not have these people in church because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you've asked them wrongly." What if this was the case? Think about it. Is it possible that there are people who are supposed to be sitting beside you right now, but they're not here because no one has asked them to look into faith in Jesus. There are people out there, I guarantee you, who are open, who are searching for God, but no Christian has asked them to come and see. And that's the whole reason that we do Alpha here at this parish. That's why we preach on it so much, because in my opinion, Alpha is the easiest way to invite someone to faith in Jesus. Alpha is a very important part of our parish. It's in our game plan. You can see that red question mark right there. Discover Jesus, try Alpha. And it's in our game plan, which is our pathway, that we want every single one of our parishioners to be plugged into. So if you haven't taken Alpha yet, you are missing out on something very important to this community. But if you have done Alpha, then your part is to ask someone new to try it. But the way that you ask them should be in accordance to the wisdom that James speaks about in his letter. We have to ask them for the right reasons and in the right way. So, how do you do this? Well, the first thing you have to do is open your mouth and ask. Very first thing you got to do. You just have to ask someone. A couple of days ago, I was in a restaurant with some friends, and I decided I was going to ask my waitress to come to this upcoming Alpha that's starting next week. And so when the bills came, I said to her, hey, before you go, all of us here at the table, we all go to this really awesome church called St. Benedict. And next week, we're launching something called Alpha. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's this chance for people, no matter what their faith background is, no matter where they're at with God, to just come together with other people and to explore, to share some food together. We watch a video about some aspect of the Christian faith, and then we talk about it. We talk about some of life's biggest questions that we don't really get a chance to talk about anywhere else. Is that something you'd be interested in? And she thought about it, and she said, well, it sounds like a pretty great place. It actually sounds like something I might be interested in. And I said, well, I have a little card with me. It's the same card that's in your pew, right? Every single one of you has this card in front of you. I just handed this to her and said, there's details on this. I'd love for you to check it out. We'd love for you to be there. And she took the card. She said thank you, that she'd think about it. And that was it. Well, actually, that wasn't it, because one of the other guys at the table invited another waitress in the restaurant to come to Alpha, gave her a card. So we figured, if we just triangulate, we'll be able to ask everyone in the restaurant by the end of the night. But that's all it took. It's not complicated. You don't have to overthink this. You just have to open your mouth and ask someone to come. Do you want to try? I don't know if she's going to come to Alpha. I sure hope she does. But my responsibility is to ask. It's up to her and God to figure out what works best for her, what she's open to right now. And you have to ask in the right way. Right? I didn't try to shove the card into her and say, you're not getting a tip unless you come to Alpha. Right? Or you're going to go to hell if you don't come to Alpha. And she's going to say, that's the last time I put, extra pepper in your food, Father Isaac. Right? You also don't want to come across as if you're embarrassed about your faith. Like, oh, yeah, we're doing this thing at our church. It's for really weird Christians. I don't know, yeah, we're weird. We do this thing. And I don't know, if you have no friends and you're looking for something to do, I don't know, maybe you could try Alpha. I don't know. Like, no, just be simple, be confident, and leave it up to them to decide. And then finally, you have to ask for the right reason. The key here is asking God, what do you want to do in this person's life? What do you want for this person? What's your heart for them? We try to catch the compassion, the heart of God in this. And truly, God loves people. He loves people. He wants them to know Him. He wants them to be healed. He wants them to be forgiven. He wants them to be restored. He wants them to have a peace and a joy that this world can't offer. And so when we tap into the heart of God and we have His heart for people, asking becomes so much easier because we're not doing it because of what we want. We put our wants aside. What does God want for this person? I want to show you a video of someone who did Alpha very recently. And you can hear for yourself what it's like for someone to go through this course and explore their faith.
My name's Diane, and I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Before Alpha, I was Catholic my whole life. Made to go to church with my parents, the typical. When I was about to be confirmed, I asked what's confirmation, and they said, well, that's when you get to choose. I said, oh, I'm out of here. But I was forced to come in, but that was good. It was good. And then I just continued with the Catholic faith the way that I thought I had to. And then my world kind of crumbled. My parents were ill. My marriage wasn't doing so well. I had a little one and didn't know what to do. So the only thing I could think of was what my parents taught me, and that was to go to church. It was actually probably the second or third time I came to church. It was the second or third week. It started being advertised and seeing the videos in church, and I thought, that kind of sounds kind of neat to go to. It didn't sound like a religious thing so much as a gathering of people to connect, and I thought, you know what, I'm starting fresh. Maybe this is the fresh start I need. So I was excited, but that day I had gotten some bad news about my health. Was given a life-threatening illness, disease. So I said, I'm not going. I was mad at God, I was mad at the world, didn't know where to turn, what to do. And then I thought, I'm not a quitter, and if I say I'm doing something, I'm gonna do it. So I said, okay, I'll go the first day, see what it's like, and then, I'm probably not gonna go again because I'm too mad, That first day I sat there in silence, and all I kept going through my head was, what am I doing here? Why am I here? I was at church the next week saying I'm not coming back. I was determined. And then I saw a video, much like this one, saying about their experience with Alpha. His name was Jack, and he sat beside me that day. Thought, this guy looks familiar, but I'm not one to just say, hey, why don't we talk? So I sat there and I kept thinking, I just want to talk to this guy. I want to ask, should I go back? What's his thoughts? I thought, this is crazy. I don't talk to strangers. But the whole church sermon, and I just kept thinking, I gotta do it. So I talked to him, and his words were, it's your choice, but I would recommend going back. And he said, and don't worry, I was the exact same way. So what I've learned is that every single person is going to take it differently, but really in a whole, it's all the same. So just like Jack, his experience, I still follow him, and his experience is amazing. And because I kind of look at him like, oh, how come I don't have that? Or how come I'm not taking that from it? During Alpha, another man stood up about addiction. And so that was his journey, and that's what he was taking from it. Mine was totally opposite, Don't try to find answers, just let it happen. And have the faith that it will happen. You just have to wait, can't push it. Unfortunately, that's the kind of life we have now, is okay, I want answers now and I want to move quick, and I need to know where things are going. That's not his plan, but Alpha is a good start to have him start to talk to you about it and how to follow him and really listen to the people he sent here to deliver those messages. And Jesus is there to guide it towards whichever direction you're going. So I guess that's the main thing I would say, is just trust in the process. Even if you don't want to come back because it will be amazing in the end. Might be just the last day that you find it, but it happens. Yeah.
So notice how in that time of doubt, when Diane was wondering, should I go back? Why am I even here? That God orchestrated a conversation between her and Jack. And Jack did everything right. He opened his mouth and he actually invited her, asked her to come back. He didn't chicken out. But he did it for the right reason. He wanted her to experience the same thing he had experienced. He said, don't worry, I was the exact same way. And he does it in a gentle way, in a non-pressuring way. He says, it's your choice. It's your decision. I'm not going to force you. And because of that, Diane kept coming back. And it was such a good experience for her that now she's sharing her testimony about it in front of all of you. And now she's coming back on Alpha this year to help with all the new people coming. She's on team. That's a huge change in her faith life from earlier Diane, who when she found out confirmation was when she gets to choose, saying, perfect, I'm out of here. I'm done with this whole church thing. This is what happens when we ask people to come and explore their faith through Alpha. Lives are changed. People come to know the Lord. So ask someone, take that card, go out and ask someone to try Alpha. But ask them in the right way and ask them for the right reason. And what better reason than people get to meet Jesus himself?